Starting off this countdown, we have James Whitey Bulger. James Joseph Bulger Jr., otherwise known as Whitey, was an American organized crime boss and FBI informant wanted by the FBI. He was the boss of a largely Irish mob in Boston from the 1970s through the 1990s. In the early 2000s, the FBI actually decided to seek help from a crime show in Germany. They had them air photos of James and his girlfriend and told people to look out for them, saying that they were extremely dangerous and armed. Except there was one problem with that. They didn't double check the pictures that they sent in to be aired. Soon, calls were flooding in saying that they spotted this dangerous couple. However, the photos the FBI chose to broadcast were of his parents, harmless retirees. So for the next couple of days, they were doing damage control. How embarrassing. That's one reason why the FBI wants you to forget about this case. Moving on, at number 9, we have Dorothy's lost ruby slippers. Apparently, the FBI are huge fans of The Wizard of Oz. Why? Well, they spent 10 years looking for Judy Garland's lost ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz. In 2005, they were stolen from the Judy Garland Museum in Minnesota. And instead of having local police investigate, they had the FBI doing the investigation. Like, damn, how serious are those shoes? FBI's Minneapolis field office said, and I quote, "Our top priority was the safe recovery of the slippers." Dude, top priority? Some murder cases aren't even given top priority. That's the tea. But in case you guys were worried, they did manage to locate the shoes. But like I said, it took 10 years of their efforts for this. In our 8th spot, we have the Bigfoot in Oregon. In 1976, the FBI officially investigated the Bigfoot in Oregon. It all started when they came across a tuft of hair snagged on the bark of a tree. People were like, oh my god, it has to be Bigfoot hair. Plus, that site was notorious for Bigfoot sightings. So the FBI collected the hair sample and ran DNA tests on it. 42 years later, the FBI concluded that the sample was from a deer. Why did it take 42 years until the FBI made this news public? A lot of people think that they know more than they're letting on to. In our 7th spot, we have ESP. Here's another good example of FBI wasting time and money on a secret project. This project was called Project Stargate. And basically, they wanted to see if ESP could be used as part of international spying. They spent more than 3 years researching into this, until they finally concluded that it wasn't possible. On top of that, between 1972 to 1995, the Pentagon spent $20 million using psychics to try and spy on their enemies and see what they were up to. So they enlisted the help of men and women who claimed to have ESP powers. They would then help them find hostages or would trace the path of criminals on the run. They thought that they were onto something here until they realized that there was no scientific proof behind ESP, and in the end, they wasted millions of dollars. In our 6th spot, we have the DNA. Have you ever got your DNA analyzed, maybe to find out more about your family tree or family history or for genetic analysis? Well, if you have, then there is a possibility that the FBI now has records of your DNA. Basically, they are collecting this DNA history to create a DNA profile for you. This is actually the way that the FBI solved the case of the Golden State Killer. So if there ever is an unsolved case and they recover DNA from the crime scene, then they can upload this to their handy dandy site and see if it matches any of the people who have gotten their DNA analyzed in the past. It's pretty crazy. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with your fingerprints. Even if you've never been arrested before, the FBI still might have your fingerprints on file. Now, it's not what you think. They're not going around waiting for you to toss out a coffee cup so that they can then retrieve it from the trash and dust for fingerprints. No, let me explain. So, if you've ever had your fingerprints taken as part as a background check, the FBI now has them in their integrated automated fingerprint identification system. This could include getting fingerprints taken for your driver's license, for a job background check, or if you bought a gun. This database has more than 100 million fingerprints on file. What's crazy is that even with that many fingerprints on file, the FBI can find a match within 12 minutes. In our 4th spot, we have Project Greek Island. Project Greek Island is the name given to a secret bunker built under the Greenbrier Hotel in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. This might look like a normal luxury resort on the outside, but there's a full-on bunker under there. It was built in 1961 and it's over 112,000 square feet. It contains enough rooms to accommodate just over 1,000 people. It was built as a shelter for members of Congress in case of a nuclear bomb. In 1992, a Washington reporter somehow found out about this secret shelter and exposed it to the world. Shortly after, the bunker was decommissioned. They really did not want people knowing about it. So that just means that they packed up and built a new bunker somewhere else. I wonder where. In our third spot, we have the Vault. The Vault is the FBI's library containing nearly 7,000 documents on people or cases. This media has been scanned and then uploaded online. The wildest part is everyone has access to this due to the Freedom of Information Act. So if you want to read up on a potential case file that they have against you, you can. Some of the most famous case files in the vault include Marilyn Monroe, Steve Jobs, John Lennon, and Elvis Presley. All of these celebrities have case files for a number of reasons, not just for criminal activity. For example, most of the celebrities in their files were there because they were suspected to be communists, including Marilyn Monroe. So if the FBI thinks you are a threat, then they'll create a file on you, which is absolutely insane. Honestly, after this video, I'll probably have a file on me, so fun. In our second spot, we have the STINGRAY interceptors. In late 2012, it was revealed that the FBI had a new secretive security device. It was known as STINGRAY. Basically, it was a fake cell phone tower planted all over the place that can lock onto all devices in that area. They then could find out a cell phone's location, intercept phone calls, and potentially texts as well, which a number of people called unconstitutional because it's literally invading your privacy. Well, the FBI has gone to great lengths to cover up the technology's capabilities. In fact, they refuse to tell judges all of its abilities. But don't worry, they are being forced to confess what they're up to. And in our number one spot today, we have the license plate readers. All across America, the FBI is installing automated license plate readers. Why are they doing this? Well, their aim is to create databases of location information, aka who was in what area at what time. So these scanners are mounted by the side of roads and it scans every car that passes by. It then collects all the data and stores it, which seems crazy. They literally will have records of everywhere you go. It's like they're tracking your every move. A report revealed that in Washington alone, nearly every block has more than 250 of these cameras. These cameras scan 1,800 images per minute. It seems intrusive, but it's the FBI's way of trying to solve crimes quicker, or keep an eye on its citizens. Starting off this countdown, we have the drug lord. Ismael Zambada Garcia, otherwise known as El Mayo, is a wanted drug lord whose cartel controls much of the heroin production and shipment from Mexico into the US. They also traffic cocaine as well. He has been wanted since 1998. That's when the bounty on him was $2.8 million. Now it's been raised to $15 million. So the government and FBI want this guy badly. But as of now, they have had no success capturing him. In our ninth spot, we have the wire fail. This next story about the FBI is literally gonna make you facepalm. So basically, in 2010, Brooks Kellogg was accused of hiring a hitman to try and murder a coworker who sued him for $2.5 million. So the FBI decided to do a sting operation to get Kellogg to confess to his wrongdoings. So they sent an undercover agent in with a hidden camera and audio equipment. Only problem is that there was a faulty wire. Now, wouldn't you think that they would double, even triple check to make sure that there were no technical issues before sending him in? But they didn't, so it didn't record audio during the confrontation. As a result, he was almost let off the hook. In our eighth spot today, we have the fantasy tape. In 2008, the FBI was investigating an unsolved murder case when a tape was sent to them. On the tape, it sounded like someone getting tortured. Ultimately, they thought that this tape had to do with the unsolved case that they were working on. Boy, were they wrong, and it's embarrassing. Turns out that the tape actually belonged to a Tennessee judge. His secretary handed it over to the police after she was fired, and it's not of someone being tortured. The judge had made a tape of his sexual fantasies. Apparently, the tape contained, and I quote, graphic, erotic situations intertwined with legal dictation made by now former Judge Hagler. Due to this scandal, the judge did resign. How embarrassing for both the judge and the FBI, who thought that it was a solid lead. In our 7th spot, we have Whitey Bulger Part 2. So like I mentioned, this guy was an organized crime figure that also was an informant for the FBI. And the FBI knew that. In fact, they ignored that side of him if he promised to give them information about the inner workings of an Italian-American crime family. There's just a lot of things that they let slide with this guy that they definitely shouldn't have. Plus, one of the reasons why he was on the run in the first place was because his former FBI handler told him that they were coming for him. So he fled and went into hiding for 16 years. Imagine that. Coming in at number 6, we have Christine Collins. In 1928, a woman named Christine Collins made headlines after her young son, Walter Collins, went missing. At that time, the FBI was dealing with a number of scandals, so they thought, hey, if we find this woman's missing son, that would look so great on us. In the end, they ended up finding her son and returning him to her. Only problem, it wasn't her son. The FBI was like, nonsense, this is your boy, you're just delusional. So they locked her in a psychiatric ward for 10 days. That's when it was revealed that the boy was indeed not her son. Sadly, her son was actually kidnapped and then murdered in a series of murders known as the Wineville Chicken Coop murders. But imagine that, like, you're crazy, lock her up, it is her son. Come on, man. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Beltway snipers. These were a series of coordinated shootings that occurred over the course of 23 days in October of 2002. 2 snipers randomly shot 13 people. 10 sadly died, while 3 survived but were left in critical condition. One of the victims was FBI intelligence analyst Linda Franklin. Fear quickly spread in the area, and the FBI was facing immense pressure to catch these guys before more people wound up dead. They were finally caught on October 24th of 2002 when the 2 men were found sleeping in their car at 3:15 a.m. 3 weeks to find cold-blooded killers, it seems kind of short, but the FBI was under tons of public pressure and were heavily scrutinized for not catching them sooner. In our 4th spot, we have the corruption. Just a couple of years ago, an ex-FBI special agent, Babak Bromund, was arrested after it was found that he was accepting bribes linked to an Armenian criminal organization. Not only that, but he was falsifying documents to cover up these bribes. He ended up being charged with 3 counts of making false statements to a government agency to cover his bribes, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit bribery of a public official. It was found that a lawyer linked to the criminal organization made regular bribe payments to and purchased gifts for Babak while he was an FBI agent working on national security matters. The lawyer apparently bought him a $36,000 motorcycle and paid him $30,000 for a down payment on a second home in Lake Tahoe. All this among other things. In return, Babak would do things for him like diffuse any law enforcement interests in him, and he would also search the FBI database and find out what dirt they had on him and others. In our 3rd spot, we have Larry Nassar. Back in 2015, news broke that young women, a part of the USA gymnastics team, were being taken advantage of by gym owners, coaches, and staff, one of them being Larry Nassar. Larry is said to have taken advantage of at least 250 young women since 1992. And apparently the FBI severely mishandled this case. For example, in July of 2015, the FBI were first notified about the allegations against Larry. It took them until September 2016 until they started to actually investigate him. By then, 70 more athletes were taken advantage of by him. Not only that, but he was caught lying to the FBI on multiple occasions, and they did nothing about that. An attorney for 150 of the women called the FBI out and said, and I quote, "When an ordinary American citizen lies to the FBI in the course of an investigation, they are prosecuted. Yet no charges have been filed against anyone as a result of this 5-year investigation." In our 2nd spot, we have Stoneman Douglas High School. In February of 2018, Nicholas Cruz went into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland and shot at the students and staff. As a result, 17 people were killed and 17 more were left injured. Well, it turns out that the FBI had received a tip a month prior to the shooting. The tip told the FBI about Cruz's gun ownership, his desire to kill people, his erratic behavior, and even his social media posts, which were disturbing. All the signs of him conducting a school were there, and they handed it to the FBI, and they basically did nothing. The FBI even admitted that they did not follow proper protocol on this tip. Had they might have been able to prevent this from happening. And in our number one spot today, we have Viola Liuzzo. Between 1960 and 1965, an FBI informant, Gary Thomas Rowe, was given the task to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. He then was to report to the FBI information on the group members and their activities. But he was told not to participate in attacks or violent situations. But he ignored this. In 1965, a white woman named Viola Liuzzo was murdered by this Klan. They had fired shots into her car after noticing her passenger was a young black man. Gary was there when it happened, and he became an accessory to murder. To make matters worse, the FBI spread rumors that the victim, Viola, was a heroin addict, a member of the Communist Party, and that she abandoned her children to have sexual relationships with African Americans involved in the civil rights movement. Meanwhile, she was a civil rights worker that just wanted to help people, and all that stuff was just made up by the FBI. Starting off this countdown, we have Walt Disney. Turns out that Walt Disney was a secret FBI informant. Who would have guessed? Not me. I hope his codename was like Mickey Mouse or something. Anyways, from 1940 until his death in 1966, Walt Disney was a secret informer for the LA office of the FBI. He was to report to the office any un-American activities. And according to a number of leaked reports, Disney gave up the names of several Hollywood celebs who he thought were suspicious. And by suspicious, I mean he suspected them of being communists. And apparently his service really helped the FBI because in 1954 he was named full special agent in charge contact. I mean, that's pretty cool. This dude practically was living a double life. On one side, he was a cheery owner of an amusement park, and on the other side, he was a top secret FBI informant. In our ninth spot, we have Anonymous. Over the years, the hacktivist group Anonymous has exposed a number of large corporations and government officials. They even have exposed the FBI. One of the times being quite recently during June of 2020. Following the killing of George Floyd and the protests, Anonymous leaked hundreds of gigabytes of law enforcement files. Over 269 gigabytes of data were taken from over 200 law enforcement agencies. This included emails, audio recordings, videos, documents. In total, there were millions of files leaked. Some of the leaked documents showed that the FBI was monitoring the social media accounts of protesters, and they were also alerting local law enforcement about anti-police messages. Other documents showed that the FBI was tracking Bitcoin donations to protest groups, as well as highlighted some scandals and police misconduct. Now, some members have been taken down, but the FBI definitely wants the whole group taken down. I mean, what's next on their agenda? In our 8th spot today, we have the poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko. Alexander Litvinenko was a former Russian federal security officer. In 2006, he was poisoned by radioactive polonium-210. He died several days later, and his killer was never caught. Now, before his death, Alexander saw the corruption within the Russian government, and he fled to the UK. And that's when he became a huge enemy of Putin, and that's probably why Putin had him killed. He was out revealing a bunch of Russian government secrets. So of course the FBI wants to know who killed him. Now, things have changed a lot. Russia invaded Ukraine, so I can't say if that's still on the FBI's list anymore. In our 7th spot, we have the Jeff Davis 8. Between 2005 to 2008, a number of women's bodies were found in swamps and canals of Jefferson Davis Parish, Louisiana. The women all had connections with each other since they knew each other, and they were all involved in the local drug trade or sex work. And they all died the same way. They were also all said to be police informants. At least they told people close to them that they were. Anyways, their killer has never been caught. Now, of course, there's a number of theories. One is that they all witnessed the death of a drug dealer at the hands of police during a raid gone wrong, and that's why they were killed. The police killed them to cover up the crime. Now, that's the main theory that their families believe, whereas others believe that they died at the hands of a serial killer. No one knows for sure, but the FBI wants to get to the bottom of it. Did they die from a corrupt cop or cops? In our 6th spot, we have America's secret biolabs. There are a number of secret labs in America that are doing dangerous experiments right now. One that's very concerning is that the lab is working with the world's most dangerous pathogens in biosafety. But no one knows where these labs are, what they're exactly researching on, and where their safety records are. Even more concerning is that vials of bioterror bacteria have gone missing, lab mice infected with deadly viruses have escaped, and wild rodents have been found making nests with research waste. Not only that, but cattle infected in a university's vaccine experiments were repeatedly sent to be killed, and then their meat was sold for us to eat. These labs have also apparently had a number of outbreaks over the years as they're working with diseases like Ebola and bird flu. The government has repeatedly denied knowing the location of these places, and people are concerned that the labs are putting the public at risk. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Brian Laundrie. Last year, people worldwide tuned into the Gabby Petito Brian Laundrie case. They were hoping for the best, that Gabby would be found safely and would be returned home. Sadly, that wasn't the case. Gabby was found dead and Brian was the prime suspect. He was on the run for a number of days before his supposed dead body was found. But a number of people are suspicious about this whole case. One of the main reasons being they never revealed if they found a body. I believe it was just parts of his skull and his teeth, or his body was just really badly decomposed. I'm not too sure. But they haven't released a whole ton of information. Although it seems like the case is closed, there's a lot more to it than it seems. Since it is still a fairly recent case, the FBI isn't allowed to disclose all the information that they're currently working on. In our 4th spot, we have the Chicago Strangler. Since 2001, at least 55 black women have been found strangled to death in Chicago. The ways in which they die are very similar. Almost all were killed outside or in abandoned buildings and then left in alleys, dumpsters, and other semi-public places. But to the police, they say this isn't the work of a serial killer. Besides the women being strangled and in similar circumstances, there's nothing else that links them together. Now, due to public pressure, the police were forced to actually review the DNA evidence that they gathered. But the DNA found didn't match each other or anyone in the FBI database, which is weird. It suggests that the killer or killers are very careful, but it could be that there are 2 or 3 people working together to perpetrate these attacks. To this day, we still don't have an answer. In our 3rd spot, we have the Long Island serial killer. On May 2nd, 2010, a woman named Shanann Gilbert called 911 saying that someone was chasing her and trying to kill her. She was from Oak Beach near Long Island. She was going around banging on doors, screaming for help. However, no one answered. She was sadly never heard from again. Months later, a body was found in the area. Police thought it would belong to her, but it didn't. It was actually the body of another young woman. After investigating further, 3 more bodies turned up. That's when they knew that they had a serial killer on the loose. Within a few months, police found the remains of a total of 16 people in the area, at least 10 of whom appeared to have been killed by the same person. Gilbert wasn't found until December 2011. To this day, the killer has never been found. In our 2nd spot today, we have the murder of Jean-Marie Townsend. On the night of September 14th, 1954, Jean-Marie Townsend left a party but never made it home. She was found the next morning strangled by her own scarf. Now, there have been a couple of leads over the years. For example, a man with scratches all over his face apparently gave bloody clothes to the dry cleaner and asked them to clean it, but I don't think this man was ever found. Now, rumor has it that an American soldier was responsible for her death. Again, I don't think he was ever found. Shortly after, the area in which she was murdered became known as a murder mile. That's because a number of other young girls in the area claimed that they were also attacked and strangled by their scarves. 2 years later, on September 7th, 1956, a woman named Diana Suttie was also murdered by her scarf and then dumped from a car. Her murder was similar to how Jean-Marie was killed. To this day, her killer has never been found. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the death of Betty Shanks. The murder of Betty Shanks is one of the oldest and most notorious unsolved murder cases in Queensland, Australia. In 1952, Betty was found dead and her body was in terrible condition. There were no suspects and no leads as to what happened to her. Now, one theory was created by Australian historian Lyle Reed. He had been working on this case for many years, and he believes that a policeman actually killed her with his motorcycle and then staged a whole cover-up.